Right, I was not expecting me to be in this video. Okay, so you just did this opener, all right? So we're gonna go ahead and go through this process of um, reviewing exponents. So in the term 2 to the 7th is called a power. If a number is in exponential form, the exponent represents how many times the base. Now, if you remember correctly, our base is actually that 2, and our exponent is that little number in the top right-hand corner. That's our exponent. So this would be 2 to the power of 7. And so we can actually state it like that. But just remember that base is telling itself how many times am I going to multiply it to itself to the exponent number. So this would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 to the 7th power. So 2 times itself 7 times. So if we were going to do A and B, we have 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. So that would end up being, if we identified it as a factor, right, it would be 4 to the 4th. Okay, we are multiplying 4 to itself 4 times. And then B is A times A times A times A times A, right? So again, we're going to identify how many times A is a factor. And that would be A to the 5th because we have 5 A's. So A to the 5th, you're multiplying A to itself 5 times. Again, we would read this as 4 to the 4th power or A to the 5th power. Okay, you always read it like that. Again, we have this one, C negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6. And if we were to write this as a factor, we would write it as negative 6 to the 3rd. Now, please notice how we put these in parentheses, right? It's important that we put our base in parentheses if we're doing a factor, so it can make sure that we're doing the negatives as that factor with it. I just said this, right? So remember to keep the negative sign inside the parentheses. If it is outside, your answer will be negative even if you have an even number of signs. So you have to have that negative inside your parentheses if you have a negative number. Otherwise, it's going to mess up your answer, okay? Now, if we're looking at D, is 5 times 5. Hopefully you know this one, right? Your answer would end up being 25. If we identify this as a factor, it ended up being 5 squared, okay? Go ahead and try this one if you want to pause it. Right, you can go ahead and pause the video and try A and B, but A would end up being, right, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x's, so it'd be x to the 5th. U, or B, you have 3 u's there, so it would end up being u to the 3rd. Okay, now the opposite can happen too, right? If you need to, you can always split out those numbers, and so if you really wanted to, you could write out a sentence in 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Right, you could write the product of what that would be, or you can just know that it's doing 3 to the 5th, and you also have that caret on your calculator you can use, but you ended up being 243. Okay, same thing with B. Now the only difference with this one is that you have to make sure that you keep those negative signs inside those parentheses. So if you were to write this out, notice how all of our numbers are in parentheses with that negative sign, and you would end up with a negative 243. Okay, so do not forget that with negatives. Again, if you want to pause it, you can do this one as well. But C, if you were to write this one out, if you wanted to, you could do 7 times 7 times 7 times 7, which would end up being 2,401. And then D, I accidentally forgot to do a little slideshow on this one. But again, if we were to write out that negative, make sure you put those negative signs inside of parentheses. So negative 9 times negative 9 times negative 9, we would end up getting negative 729. Okay, your activity for today is going to be in the next slide, so please make sure you watch the next slide. If you need extra support, y'all, this video is on Schoology, so you can rewatch my examples, rewatch this mini lesson if you need extra support. All right, y'all. Thank you. Have a good day.